The day my company honored me for 40 years of service was also the day I finally understood that my only son no longer saw me as his father. He saw me as someone who would always understand. Someone who would always forgive. Someone who would still be waiting whenever the vacation ended, the schedule cleared, or life became convenient again. The ballroom lights dimmed inside the downtown Columbus Convention Center. More than 400 employees, executives, retired workers, community leaders, and guests turned toward the stage. 2 television cameras rolled near the back of the room. A local news crew had come to broadcast portions of the ceremony live. The master of ceremonies stepped toward the podium with a warm smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor a man whose integrity has shaped Franklin Industrial Systems for 4 decades." The giant screens behind her filled with photographs from another lifetime. There I was in 1986, 29 years old, wearing an oversized hard hat and standing beside a production line that no longer existed. Another photograph showed me laughing with coworkers whose faces had long since disappeared from the factory floor. Some had retired. Some had moved away. Several had left this world entirely. Then came photographs from company picnics, charity drives, volunteer projects, safety meetings, Christmas parties, and retirement ceremonies where I had stood applauding everybody else. That afternoon, after 40 years, it was finally my turn. The applause rose around me. I smiled politely. But my eyes kept drifting toward the empty chair beside mine. A small white card had been placed on the seat. Reserved for Ryan Carter. My son. The camera followed my gaze. The people watching the screen followed the camera. And without anyone explaining a thing, the entire room understood. That chair had been reserved for family. Instead, it held silence. The master of ceremonies noticed. She stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "Mr. Carter, would you like us to wait a few more minutes?" I shook my head. "No." Her smile softened. "Would you like someone else to sit beside you?" I looked across the ballroom. Near the back stood a nervous young man in a navy suit that was not expensive but had been pressed with great care. His hands were folded in front of him. His shoulders were stiff. He looked like he was afraid somebody might realize he did not belong among the executives and honored guests. I smiled. "Daniel." His eyes widened. The audience turned toward him. "Would you come sit with me?" Daniel pointed toward himself. "Me?" I nodded. "Your father would have been sitting there if he were still alive." The room became quiet. Daniel slowly walked down the aisle. When he reached the front row, he looked at the empty chair and hesitated. I patted the seat. "Sit down." He lowered himself beside me. "Thank you for coming," I whispered. His voice barely escaped. I would not have missed this. Those 6 words hurt more than the empty chair. Because 24 hours earlier, my own son had said nearly the opposite. 5 minutes later, our chief executive officer returned to the microphone. Richard Holloway had worked beside me for 31 years. He looked at me. Then he looked toward Daniel. "There is one final surprise." I frowned. Nobody had told me about another surprise. Richard opened a folder. Years ago, James Carter quietly declined several executive retention bonuses. Murmurs moved through the ballroom. He asked the board to invest those funds instead. Richard paused. He wanted to create something that honored loyalty, sacrifice, service, and character. The murmurs grew louder. Today, the Legacy Gratitude Fund officially begins. He smiled toward Daniel. And the first recipient was personally selected by James. Daniel stared at me. He looked completely confused. Richard's voice filled the ballroom. "Daniel Brooks will receive the first Legacy Gratitude Award in the amount of $800,000. The ballroom exploded. People stood. Some cheered. Others covered their mouths. Several people began crying. Daniel did not move. For a moment, I wondered whether he had stopped breathing. He turned toward me. "I think there has been a mistake." Richard laughed softly from the stage. "There has not." Daniel covered his face with both hands. His shoulders began shaking. I placed one hand on his back. "You earned this." He lowered his hands. "No, sir." "Yes." I squeezed his shoulder. "You spent 20 years becoming the kind of man your father prayed you would become. This is not charity. This is recognition." 3 hours later, I sat alone inside my pickup truck outside the small ranch house where my wife and I had raised Ryan. My phone vibrated again and again against the passenger seat. When I finally looked, the screen showed 112 missed calls. Most were from Ryan. The rest were from his wife, Ashley. There were unknown numbers. Reporters. Old relatives. Former co-workers. People who had not spoken to me in years. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Then I placed the phone face down. Because the story everyone had witnessed on live television had not begun inside that ballroom. It had begun 6 years earlier, when grief entered our family and slowly turned a son's distance into absence. My name is James Carter. I was 70 years old when the ceremony took place. For most of my life, I had believed family could survive almost anything if people continued showing up. I still believe that. But I have learned that love cannot force somebody to arrive. You can leave the porch light on. You can keep the door unlocked. You can forgive every missed dinner and every unanswered call. But eventually, an empty chair tells the truth no parent wants to speak aloud. Until 6 years earlier, I never imagined my family could drift apart. My wife, Linda, and I had built a simple life. Nothing glamorous. Nothing people would envy on social media. A small brick house. Friday night pizza. Church on Sunday mornings. Backyard cookouts. Camping trips every summer. An aging station wagon we kept running long after every sensible person would have replaced it. Ryan grew up believing we were ordinary. He believed we were not wealthy. The truth was that Linda and I simply believed money should purchase security, not attention. We saved quietly. We invested carefully. We went without things our neighbors purchased because we wanted Ryan to begin adulthood without the weight that had followed us through ours. Linda was a nurse. She worked 10-hour shifts and still came home asking what everyone else needed. She repaired Ryan's baseball uniform after midnight. She baked every birthday cake herself. She kept every report card, every school photograph, every handwritten Mother's Day card. She loved our son with the quiet, stubborn devotion of a woman who never considered sacrifice unusual. To Linda, loving somebody meant placing their needs inside your day and adjusting everything else around them. She never made speeches about it. She simply did it. Then pancreatic cancer entered our lives. The diagnosis arrived quickly. The decline arrived faster. Within months, the strongest person I knew became too weak to cross the bedroom without assistance. Ryan was 31. Already married. Already constructing a life that seemed brighter, busier, and more impressive than ours had ever been. For a while, he visited often. He sat beside his mother. Held her hand. Told her stories from work. Promised he would keep checking on me. Linda believed him. So did I. The night before she died, Linda asked to speak to Ryan alone. I stepped into the hallway. I never asked what she said. That conversation belonged to them. But when Ryan emerged, his eyes were swollen. He hugged me. "I'll take care of you, Dad." I held him tightly. I know. At the time, I believed promises made beside a dying mother carried a different weight. Perhaps they do. But even heavy promises can become lighter when carried through years of comfort and distraction. Linda's death created silence inside me. Inside Ryan, it seemed to create distance. At first, I told myself that was normal. People grieve differently. Jobs become demanding. Marriages require attention. Life continues moving even when somebody you love is no longer moving with it. I understood that. I never expected weekly visits. I did not expect Ryan to call every night. I only hoped we would remain father and son. Instead, our relationship slowly became a series of postponed appointments. "Dad, can I call you later?" "Dad, we're busy this weekend." "Dad, maybe next month." Later became next week. Next week became next month. Months became seasons. Seasons became years. Whenever Ryan did visit, Ashley always appeared eager to leave. She was not openly rude. That would have been easier to confront. She simply treated time with me like an obligation squeezed between brunches, vacations, dinner reservations, and social events. She checked the time, glanced toward the door, mentioned traffic before anybody suggested leaving. I never blamed her entirely. Marriage changes priorities. But somewhere along the way, Ryan stopped making decisions for himself. If Ashley wanted something, it quickly became Ryan's preference, too. If she found a visit inconvenient, he found a reason to agree. If she wanted a vacation, every other commitment became flexible. I noticed the change in small things. He stopped fishing with me. Stopped coming over to watch football. Stopped asking my advice about work, money, or the house. Birthdays became text messages. Father's Day became a gift card mailed directly from a website. Sometimes he called while driving, but ended the conversation the moment he reached his destination. I became somebody he spoke to between more important parts of his life. Still, I never complained. Parents are not supposed to keep score. At least good parents are not. But even when you do not keep score, the heart remembers who came. It also remembers who did not. 3 months before my retirement ceremony, Franklin Industrial Systems announced an unexpected celebration. The board wanted to recognize employees with 40 years of uninterrupted service. Only 2 people qualified. The other had retired quietly overseas. That left me. The communications department wanted interviews, historical photographs, television coverage, and a formal event at the Columbus Convention Center. I would have been satisfied with a handshake and a sheet cake inside the break room. Richard refused. "You have spent 40 years taking care of this company, James. Now let us take care of you." A week later, I drove to Ryan's house. He answered the door wearing golf clothes. Ashley was loading suitcases into their sport utility vehicle. "You heading somewhere?" I asked. "Weekend in Tennessee," Ryan said. He looked cheerful. Busy. Successful. Everything a father hopes his child will become. Almost. I handed him the invitation. He opened it. His eyes widened. "They're televising this?" "Apparently." He laughed. "That's pretty cool, Dad. I would really like you there." He glanced toward Ashley. Then he looked back at me. "Of course I'll be there." He hugged me. "I wouldn't miss it." I believed every word. Because no matter how old your child becomes, some part of you continues believing the promises they make. You remember the little boy who held your hand in parking lots. The teenager who asked for help. The young man who cried beside his mother's hospital bed. You do not see only the adult standing before you. You see every version of your child at once. And because you remember all of them, you keep expecting the best one to return. 24 hours before the ceremony, Ryan called. His name remained on my screen for several seconds before I answered. Something inside me already knew. Or perhaps something had finally stopped pretending not to know. "Hey, Dad." His voice sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. "Everything all right?" "Yeah. Listen, Ashley found this incredible last-minute deal." I did not answer. "It's a luxury resort in Scottsdale. 5-star place. The price is unbelievable. We leave tomorrow morning." Tomorrow morning. The morning of my ceremony. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Outside the window, the maple tree Linda and I had planted 25 years earlier moved gently in the evening breeze. "I thought your ceremony started in the afternoon," Ryan continued quickly. "It does. But the flight is in the morning." "Yes. We already booked it." "Have you?" A long pause followed. "No. So you could still come." Another silence. Then I heard Ashley's voice in the background. "Babe, tell them they'll understand." Ryan lowered his voice. "Dad, we've both been working so hard. Ashley really needs this vacation." I smiled although nobody could see it. "I understand." "You do?" "Yes. We'll celebrate next week. I'll take you somewhere nice." "That sounds fine." "You aren't upset?" "No." "Really?" "I'm 70 years old, Ryan." He laughed nervously. "I guess you've learned not to sweat the small stuff." I looked at Linda's tree. If only you knew, I thought. We said goodbye. The house became quiet. I stood in the kitchen holding the phone long after the call ended. I imagined the ceremony. The lights. The speeches. The family photographs. The chair beside me. I had spent 4 decades working for one company. I had missed weekends, accepted overnight shifts, and turned down promotions so Ryan would not have to leave Ohio. The company wanted one afternoon to say thank you. My son had chosen a swimming pool in Arizona. Pain makes people want immediate action. A sharp message. A guilt-filled telephone call. A sentence designed to make the other person hurt as much as you do. Linda used to tell me something whenever Ryan disappointed us as a teenager. Do not react while you are hurting. Wait until you are thinking clearly. She had always been wiser than I was. So I did not call Ryan back. I did not send an angry message. I did not tell him the truth about how deeply his absence would hurt. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled to another name. Daniel Brooks. Daniel answered after the second ring. Mr. Carter, I hope I'm not interrupting dinner. Not at all. I have a favor to ask. Anything. There was no hesitation. Not even 1 second. That alone tightened my throat. My company is holding a ceremony tomorrow. I remember you mentioning it. My son will not be coming. Daniel became quiet. I'm sorry. I'd like somebody sitting beside me. Another pause. Then he spoke softly. You want me there? I do. I would be honored. No questions. No excuses. No checking his calendar. No asking what was in it for him. Only. I would be honored. I smiled for the first time that evening. Your father would be proud of you. Daniel's voice cracked. I hope so. I had first met Daniel almost 30 years earlier. Back then, he was a skinny boy racing a bicycle down our neighborhood sidewalk while his father, Michael Brooks, grilled hamburgers in the backyard. Michael was not simply my co-worker. He was my brother in every way except blood. We started at Franklin Industrial Systems 6 months apart. Same factory floor. Same impossible supervisors. Same mandatory overtime. Same cheap coffee. We purchased our first houses within a year of each other. Our wives became best friends. Our sons grew up playing catch together. Some of the happiest memories of my life involved Michael laughing so hard he could not finish telling a joke. He had a deep laugh that pulled everyone else into it. The kind of man who made every room feel brighter by entering. Then came the explosion. It happened during a maintenance shutdown. A faulty pressure valve failed. Wrong place. Wrong moment. Everything changed in seconds. Metal screamed. Steam filled the room. The lights disappeared behind white vapor. Something heavy struck the floor beside me. Then another piece of equipment fell. I remember losing my balance. I remember the heat. I remember thinking, this is it. Michael did not run toward the exit. He ran toward me. He crawled through the steam, found my jacket, and dragged me across the concrete while alarms echoed through the building. Later, doctors told me another 30 seconds inside that room could have killed me. Michael never spoke about what he did. Whenever somebody called him a hero, he shrugged. You would have done the same. Maybe I would have. Maybe I would not. I will never know. Because Michael never gave me the chance to find out. Years later, cancer did what the explosion could not. Watching Michael disappear one hospital visit at a time remains one of the hardest things I have ever experienced. The powerful shoulders became narrow. The voice became faint. The laugh that once filled rooms disappeared first. The night before he died, Michael asked everyone else to leave. Only the two of us remained. He reached for my hand. His grip was weak. His eyes were not. Look after my boy. I nodded. You will not have to ask twice. A faint smile touched his mouth. I knew that. Those were the final words Michael ever spoke to me. Daniel was 19. Too young to lose his father. Too proud to ask anybody for help. He stocked grocery shelves during the evening. Attended community college during the day. Delivered pizzas on weekends. Whenever I offered him money, he politely refused. "I'll figure it out." So I learned to help without making him feel helped. When his old pickup stopped running, I introduced him to a retired mechanic who rebuilt engines almost for free. When he transferred to Ohio State's engineering program, I connected him with friends who helped him find affordable housing. When he graduated, I sat in the audience. Not because anybody expected me to. Because I had promised his father. Life had different plans for Daniel. He earned an engineering degree but discovered he loved mentoring teenagers more than designing machines. He became a public school robotics teacher. Some people said he was wasting his education. I disagreed. He took young people who believed they were not intelligent and placed tools in their hands. He taught them to build something. Then he watched their confidence rise with it. Every Christmas, he mailed me a handwritten card. Every birthday, he called. Whenever my gutters needed cleaning or my furnace began making unusual sounds, Daniel somehow discovered it before I asked. He simply appeared with a toolbox. Figured you could use another set of hands. That was the kind of man he became. Not because anyone promised him a reward. Because that was the kind of man Michael had raised. The morning of the ceremony, I arrived early. Daniel was already standing outside the convention center. His navy suit had clearly survived several weddings, funerals, and school functions. Yet he stood straighter than many executives entering those doors. "You clean up well," I teased. He laughed. "It's the only suit I own. It looks perfect." He handed me a small gift bag. "You did not have to bring me anything. It isn't much." Inside was a leather-bound journal. I opened it. On the first page, Daniel had written one sentence. "Some men earn promotions. Others earn respect. You taught me the difference." For several seconds, I could not speak. Finally, I looked up. "Your father would be proud." Daniel smiled, but his eyes filled. "I've spent 20 years hoping you would say that." Before we entered, my telephone vibrated. Ryan had posted a photograph online. He and Ashley stood beside a sparkling resort pool. Oversized sunglasses. Cocktails raised. Palm trees behind them. The caption read, "Finally taking the vacation we deserve. Life is too short." Thousands of miles away, my son smiled for strangers while I stood outside the ceremony he had promised not to miss. I locked the phone. Then I looked toward Daniel. "Ready?" "As ready as I will ever be." Neither of us knew that within 2 hours, the entire country watching the broadcast would witness something none of us had expected. The ballroom looked even larger after every seat had been filled. More than 400 people attended. Executives. Factory workers. Office staff. Retired employees. Community leaders. Reporters. Daniel and I sat together in the front row. He kept glancing around as though somebody might ask him to prove he belonged there. I leaned toward him. "Relax. I'm trying. You look like you're about to take a final examination." I have spoken before classrooms full of teenagers. Somehow, this is more frightening. "Trust me," I said. "Teenagers are tougher." That finally made him smile. Several members of the executive board sat nearby. One after another, they walked over to shake my hand. They thanked me for years of service. But every few minutes, someone's eyes drifted toward the empty chair originally reserved for Ryan. Nobody asked where he was. Nobody needed to. Absence has its own voice. That chair spoke loudly enough. At exactly 2 o'clock, the lights dimmed. The historical video began. There I was at 27, hair so thick I barely recognized myself, standing beside the first production line I had ever supervised. Then came a photograph of Linda and me at the company Christmas party in 1991. She wore a red dress purchased on clearance because we were saving every possible dollar for Ryan's college fund. I smiled. She had looked beautiful. The next photograph showed Ryan at 7 years old, wearing an oversized hard hat during family day. He had insisted he wanted to work with Dad when he grew up. My chest tightened. Funny how life changes. 40 years passed across those screens in 5 minutes. It looked simple when compressed into photographs. Only I knew how many overnight shifts, missed weekends, delayed birthdays, and quiet sacrifices filled the spaces between them. The master of ceremonies returned. James Carter became more than an employee. She smiled. He became the standard the rest of us tried to follow. The applause returned. Then she introduced Richard. Richard adjusted the microphone. I have spent 31 years working beside James. He looked at me. In all those years, I have never once questioned whether he would do the right thing. He paused. Sometimes the right thing cost him promotions. The audience looked surprised. James declined executive opportunities that required relocating because his wife did not want to leave Ohio and his son wanted to remain near his school and friends. I looked down. That had been true. I had never considered it heroic. I considered it being a husband and father. Richard continued. He also refused several performance and retention bonuses. Now I frowned. We had not discussed that. He smiled as if he could read my thoughts. I know James hates attention. Laughter moved through the ballroom. But today is not about what makes him comfortable. It is about telling the truth. One person after another shared stories. A maintenance supervisor described the night I stayed through a blizzard because several younger workers could not drive home safely. A receptionist told everyone I had quietly paid for medical equipment after her husband suffered a stroke. A former employee described how I had helped him obtain treatment after an addiction nearly ended his career. I had forgotten some of those moments. Because when you help somebody, you usually do not preserve the receipt. You do what needs to be done. Then you move forward. Richard invited me onto the stage. The applause lasted nearly a full minute. Standing beneath the bright lights felt deeply uncomfortable. I would have preferred repairing a machine or organizing an inventory schedule. Anything except being watched. Richard handed me a heavy crystal sculpture engraved with my name. 40 years. It suddenly felt real. He shook my hand. You earned every day of it. Then the master of ceremonies returned. James, we noticed somebody sitting beside you. The giant screen showed Daniel. His eyes grew wide. The audience applauded politely. Would you tell us about him? I looked toward Daniel. He appeared ready to disappear beneath the chair. I stepped toward the microphone. His name is Daniel Brooks. My best friend, Michael Brooks, worked beside me for almost 30 years. Several retired employees smiled. They remembered Michael. He saved my life during an industrial explosion. The room became silent. When cancer took him, Daniel was 19. I looked toward him. His father asked me for one thing before he died. My voice caught. He asked me to look after his son. Daniel lowered his head. I never replaced his father. I could not. But I have watched Daniel become the kind of man every father hopes to raise. The audience applauded. Daniel wiped his eyes. Then I added one final sentence. If anybody deserved to sit in my son's seat today, it was Daniel. The entire room stood. Another standing ovation. Longer this time. Stronger. More emotional. I saw factory workers crying. Executives wiping their eyes. Retired employees leaning against one another. Daniel pressed both hands over his face. At that point, I believed the ceremony had reached its emotional peak. Then Richard returned to the microphone. Actually, there is one final surprise. He explained the Legacy Gratitude Fund. 12 years earlier, I had approached the board with an unusual request. Rather than accepting future executive retention bonuses, I asked the company to invest the money. I wanted something that would outlive me. Richard opened a folder and read from a letter I had forgotten writing. Money disappears. Character does not. Help one good person, and that person may spend a lifetime helping others. The room became perfectly still. For years, Richard continued, the fund quietly grew through company contributions, investment returns, and private donations from retired executives. Today, it has reached $800,000. Gasps filled the ballroom. Even I had not known the final amount. The agreement gave James one privilege. He alone would select the first recipient. Every camera turned toward me. Richard looked directly at Daniel. Daniel Brooks, please join us on stage. Daniel stood slowly. His knees visibly shook. When he reached the stage, Richard extended his hand. On behalf of Franklin Industrial Systems, we are honored to present you with the first Legacy Gratitude Award. $800,000. Daniel stared at him. Then he stared at me. I cannot accept this. Richard smiled gently. You already have. Daniel's eyes filled. Why? I placed my hand on his shoulder. Because your father once saved my life. And because you have spent the last 20 years honoring his. The audience rose again. The applause seemed endless. I had no idea that somewhere beside a luxury swimming pool in Arizona, Ryan and Ashley had just watched every second on live television. After the ceremony, people surrounded Daniel and me. Former coworkers waited in line to shake my hand. Retirees hugged me. Employees asked for photographs. One woman from Human Resources said, "I have never seen a ceremony like this." Another employee laughed through tears. I think half the room cried. I smiled. I was not planning any of that. I believe you, she replied. That is why everybody loved it. Daniel remained overwhelmed. Every few minutes, he whispered the same sentence. I still cannot believe this. Eventually, I pulled him aside. Listen to me. He looked at me with wet eyes. That money is not a reward for one afternoon. What do you mean? It is recognition for the man you have spent 20 years becoming. He shook his head. I do not know how to thank you. You already have. How? You showed up. He looked confused. I smiled. Sometimes that is the greatest gift anybody can give. Richard joined me near the ballroom window with 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one. You all right? I think so. I have known you too long. Much too long. You are trying very hard not to think about Ryan. I sighed. Am I that obvious? Only 2 old friends. We stood quietly, looking across downtown Columbus. Then Richard asked. Do you want our media department to remove any mention of the empty chair? I considered it. People would ask questions. News outlets loved stories that wrote themselves. An elderly father. An absent son. A substitute sitting in the chair. An $800,000 gift. It was designed for social media whether we wanted it or not. No. Are you certain? I do not want anybody attacking my son. Richard nodded. But you do not want us hiding the truth. Exactly. He placed one hand on my shoulder. You are a better father than most men would be. I was not sure that was true. Good fathers do not always raise good sons. Sometimes they simply keep loving them while waiting for them to become better men. Daniel insisted on driving behind me to make sure I arrived home safely. I protested. He laughed. You have looked after me for 20 years. Let me return the favor for one afternoon. When we reached my ranch house, he parked behind me. We stood in the driveway for almost half an hour. What are you going to do? I asked. About what? The money. He looked toward the ground. I have not thought that far. I assumed you already had a list. A small smile appeared. My students. I was not surprised. Our robotics program barely survives each year. We lose children because families cannot afford equipment. He paused. I want every child who loves engineering to have a chance. Then he laughed. And maybe I will replace my 15-year-old pickup. I wondered how long it would take you to admit that. It is making several concerning noises. You have earned a newer truck. Daniel's expression became serious. No. My father earned that. Those words struck harder than I expected. Michael would have smiled hearing his son say them. After Daniel left, I entered my house. The silence felt familiar. I loosened my tie. Hung the suit jacket in the closet. Placed the Crystal Award on the fireplace mantel beside Linda's photograph. I looked at her smiling face. You would have liked today. For one moment, I could almost hear her answer. Then my telephone began vibrating across the kitchen table. Once. Twice. Again. 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 Unknown number. I ignored it. Ryan. I ignored that one, too. Ashley. Ryan again. The phone would not stop. When I finally picked it up, the notification screen seemed endless. Missed calls. Voicemails. Text messages. When I counted them, there were 112. Then Ryan's name appeared again. This time, I answered. "Hello, son." His breathing sounded rushed. Almost panicked. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked around my quiet kitchen. "Tell you what?" "The money. The $800,000. You knew." "I knew there would be a gift." "You never told me. You never asked." Silence. Then Ryan spoke quickly. "Ashley and I are driving to the airport. I thought you were enjoying your vacation. We're leaving." "There is no need." "Dad, we're coming home. You have already spent money on the flights. This is not about the vacation." "What is it about?" He hesitated. For several seconds, he could not answer. Finally, his voice became small. "I should have been there." I closed my eyes. "Yes. I made a mistake." "You did." Another silence followed. "Are you angry?" I thought carefully. "No." "You're not?" "I am disappointed." There is a difference. A large one. Anger often burns quickly. Disappointment settles much deeper. Suddenly, Ashley took the telephone. "James." "Hello, Ashley. I think everybody has become a little carried away." "What do you mean?" "People online are making Ryan look like a terrible son." "I have not spoken to anybody online." "I know, but the empty chair. What about it?" "It embarrassed us." I took a slow breath. "No." "What?" "The chair did not embarrass you. You embarrassed yourselves." Silence. "You could have warned us. I invited you." "That is not what I mean." "I know." Her voice became colder. "People think Daniel deserves that money more than Ryan." I answered honestly. "That is because Daniel was there." She released an irritated sound. "So that is it?" "What? You replaced your own son?" "No." My voice remained calm. "Ryan replaced himself." Ashley had nothing left to say. She handed the phone back. Ryan spoke quietly. "Dad, I am coming over tonight. I'll be here. I love you." The words surprised me. He had not said them in months. Perhaps longer. "I love you, too." Then the call ended. Within hours, clips from the ceremony spread everywhere. Local stations replayed the announcement. National websites picked up the story. Comment sections filled with stories from strangers who felt forgotten by their own children. Parents wrote about sacrifices nobody remembered. Adult children admitted they had assumed there would always be another visit. The attention made me uncomfortable. People knew one afternoon. They did not know Ryan. Not truly. Ryan was not evil. He was not naturally cruel. He had simply spent too many years believing there would always be another chance. Another birthday. Another dinner. Another phone call. Another ceremony. Another tomorrow. Life has a painful way of proving otherwise. As darkness settled outside, headlights entered my driveway. Ryan stepped from the sport utility vehicle. His shoulders were low. He looked older than he had that morning. Ashley climbed from the passenger side. Unlike Ryan, she was not carrying regret. She was carrying anger. Ryan stood near the driveway. Ashley marched toward the porch. "James," she called before I opened the screen door. "We need to talk." I unlocked the door. "You had better come inside." Neither of them spoke as they entered. Ashley looked around the living room as though she had never truly seen it. The worn leather recliner. The brick fireplace. Linda's favorite quilt folded across the couch. Family photographs covering one wall. Ryan stood before those pictures. There he was at 6 years old, holding his first baseball trophy. At 16, standing beside his first car. On his college graduation day. Linda stood between us, smiling so brightly it still hurt. Ryan swallowed. I have not been here in a while. No, I said softly. You have not. Silence settled through the room. Ashley broke it. I'll say what everybody is thinking. Ryan looked at her. Ashley, no. She crossed her arms. $800,000. You knew Daniel for years. You could have mentioned something. I poured 3 glasses of iced tea and placed them on the coffee table. Nobody touched a glass. I did not know the amount. You knew there was money. I knew there would be a gift. She leaned forward. And you chose somebody else's son. I met her eyes. I chose somebody who showed up. Ryan closed his eyes. Dad? Ashley turned toward him. Do not just sit there. He should have told us. Ryan looked exhausted. Ashley, he did not embarrass us. Yes, he did. No. Ryan shook his head slowly. We embarrassed ourselves. She stared at him. What? He invited us. We said no. Her face hardened. So you're taking his side? I'm taking the truth. For the first time since entering, Ashley had no immediate answer. Ryan looked at me. I owe you an apology. I nodded. You do. I'm sorry. I believe you. He appeared surprised. You do? I believe you are sorry. I paused. I just do not know what you are sorry about. He frowned. What do you mean? Are you sorry because you hurt me? Or because the entire country watched it happen? Ryan did not answer. Not because he was stubborn. Because he honestly did not know. I stood and walked down the hallway. When I returned, I carried 3 old storage boxes. Ryan recognized them. I have not seen those since Mom. His voice faded. I placed the boxes on the coffee table. Open them. He slowly lifted the first lid. Inside were folders, receipts, old envelopes, canceled checks, and handwritten notes. What is all this? Our life. He picked up a faded tuition statement from Ohio State. His name appeared at the top. The balance was marked paid in full. Another envelope contained canceled checks. Semester after semester. Books. Housing. Meal plans. Fees. Scholarships covered most of this, he said. They covered some. I never knew. You were not supposed to. He reached deeper into the box. There were documents for the down payment on his first house. The loan I had quietly co-signed. Records from his wedding. The photographer. The florist. The reception hall. Ryan stared at one receipt. His eyes widened. Dad, you paid for this. I helped. I thought Grandpa paid for most of it. No. He looked at me. You never said anything. What would have been the point? Parents do not raise children to collect thank you notes. We raise them because that is what parents do. Ryan opened the second box. Inside were photographs. One showed Linda repairing patches on his Little League uniform after a 10-hour nursing shift. Another showed me replacing our roof because paying a contractor would have required using money from Ryan's college savings. There were photographs from camping trips instead of expensive vacations. Birthday cakes baked at home instead of ordered from bakeries. The old station wagon. Ryan lifted one picture. I remember this car. It had nearly 200,000 miles. You always said you liked it. I smiled. I hated that car. He laughed through gathering tears. Then why did you keep it? Because replacing the transmission cost less than your freshman textbooks. His shoulders began shaking. He stared at the photograph. I never knew. I know. The third box contained something different. Letters. Dozens of them. Every birthday card Linda had written. Every Christmas note. Every message she had placed inside his lunchbox during elementary school. Ryan unfolded one. Linda's familiar handwriting filled the page. No matter how old you become, always remember that time is the most valuable gift you can give somebody you love. Ryan's tears finally came. Not tears of embarrassment. Not panic. Grief. Regret. The pain of realizing that a lesson written by his mother years ago had been waiting inside a box while he was busy ignoring it. He covered his face. I have become the man Mom warned me not to become. Nobody spoke. The silence said enough. A soft knock interrupted us. I opened the door. Daniel stood there holding a cardboard box. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I did not know you had company." "It's all right." Ryan stood. Daniel immediately appeared uncomfortable. "I can return another time." "No," Ryan said. "Please stay." Daniel stepped inside. He placed the box on the kitchen counter. "I brought dinner." I laughed. "You did not have to. I figured after today nobody remembered to eat." The sentence sounded exactly like Michael. Ryan watched Daniel move through the kitchen. Daniel knew where I kept the plates. Which cabinet held the glasses. He knew the coffee maker switch needed to be pressed twice. Not because he lived there. Because he had been visiting. Helping. Showing up quietly for years. Ryan looked at him. "How often do you come here?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't know. Every couple of weeks," I answered. "Sometimes more." Ryan nodded slowly. "You have been taking care of my dad." Daniel looked embarrassed. "He took care of me first." Ashley stood suddenly. "This is unbelievable." All three of us looked toward her. "So now everybody gets to act like Ryan is some terrible son." Nobody answered. She grabbed her purse. "I am not sitting here listening to this guilt trip." Ryan looked at her. "You should go." She blinked. "What?" "You heard me." "Ryan. I need to stay." "For him?" Ryan looked at me. Then he looked back at his wife. "For me." Ashley stared at him. Then she stormed through the front door. The slam echoed through the house. Ryan did not follow. For the first time in years, he was not looking at me like an obligation. He was looking at me like his father. After Ashley left, the house felt strangely peaceful. Nobody rushed to fill the silence. Daniel unpacked the dinner. Homemade chicken noodle soup. Fresh bread. Apple pie like Linda used to bake every autumn. "I hope you do not mind," Daniel said. "I figured today was too important for fast food." "Your timing could not be better." We sat at the kitchen table. Three men. Three different stories. For the first few minutes, nobody said much. People imagine reconciliation happens after a perfect speech. Usually, it does not. Healing often begins over soup. Across an ordinary table. When nobody leaves. Ryan finally spoke. "I honestly do not remember the last time we ate dinner together." I looked at him. "Thanksgiving." He frowned. "No. 3 years ago." His face fell. "I thought it was only last year." I nodded gently. Time moves faster than we realize. That sentence remained over the table longer than anything else we said. The following week felt different. Ryan called every morning. Not to ask for anything. Not to explain himself. Simply to ask. "How are you today, Dad?" At first, I wondered whether guilt was speaking. But guilt usually becomes tired. Consistency does not. Monday became Tuesday. Tuesday became Friday. The calls continued. One afternoon, Ryan arrived carrying 2 fishing rods. "I found these in my garage." I recognized them immediately. One belonged to him. The other belonged to me. "I thought maybe, if you're free Saturday." I smiled. "I have been free for years." His eyes filled. "I know." That Saturday, we returned to the lake where I taught him to fish at 8 years old. The wooden dock still leaned slightly to one side. The paint had faded. The benches had been replaced. Everything else felt familiar. Ryan cast his line across the water. "I forgot how quiet this place is. That is why I like it." He looked across the lake. "I used to believe success meant having the biggest house, the nicest vacations, and the newest car." He laughed softly. "I spent so much time chasing things that I forgot to make time for people." I did not interrupt. He needed to hear himself speak. "My entire life, you showed up." He turned toward me. "And I stopped showing up for you." I nodded. "Yes. I am ashamed. I know. You are not making this easy." "No." I smiled gently. "Forgiveness is not difficult. Trust is." He accepted that without arguing. That alone told me he was changing. Meanwhile, Daniel's life transformed. News stations continued sharing the story of the Legacy Gratitude Fund. Parents wrote letters thanking him for becoming a teacher. Former students posted messages describing how he inspired them to study engineering and skilled trades. Daniel used the attention for something useful. He announced that nearly half the award would create scholarships for students interested in robotics, engineering, and technical careers. During one interview, a reporter asked why. Daniel answered, "I would not be standing here if somebody had not believed in me long before I believed in myself." He never mentioned my name unless asked. That was typical Daniel. He redirected praise towards somebody else. A month later, Daniel invited Ryan and me to visit his classroom. Teenagers crowded around unfinished robots, computer screens, wires, motors, and tool benches. A young girl approached shyly. "Mr. Brooks says you are the reason we received new equipment." I laughed. "No." I pointed toward Daniel. "He is the reason." She smiled. "He says you taught him generosity." Daniel heard her. He looked at me across the classroom. Neither of us spoke. We did not need to. Michael would have understood. Ryan began visiting every Sunday. Sometimes we watched football. Sometimes we worked in the yard. Sometimes we drank coffee on the porch without saying much. He never behaved as though one apology erased years of distance. Instead, he did something much harder. He kept returning. One afternoon, he arrived carrying a toolbox. "What are we fixing?" I asked. "The fence. It is not broken." He smiled. "I know. I needed an excuse to spend the day with you." I laughed harder than I had in months. "You finally sound like my son again." Ashley never returned. She and Ryan separated quietly several weeks later. There was no dramatic courtroom battle. No revenge. No shouting in the street. Only two people realizing they wanted different lives. One evening, Ryan admitted something. "I do not blame Ashley." I looked at him. "I made my own choices. I kept choosing convenience. I kept assuming you would understand." He lowered his head. "I confused your patience with permission." That may have been the wisest sentence he had ever spoken. Several months after the retirement ceremony, Franklin Industrial Systems invited me back for the dedication of the Legacy Gratitude Mentorship Program. The company had expanded the fund into an annual program connecting experienced employees with young people entering engineering, manufacturing, and skilled trades. Richard welcomed the audience. This began because one man believed character should outlive a paycheck. This time, when I entered the auditorium, the front row chair beside mine was not empty. Ryan was already sitting there. He stood immediately. "I wanted to make sure I arrived early." "You certainly did. I was not going to miss this one." He smiled sheepishly. "Not for anything." Daniel sat on my other side. I looked at the two men beside me. One connected to me by blood. The other connected through a promise. And I understood something. Family is not weakened by gratitude. It is strengthened by it. The second ceremony was quieter. No surprise gifts. No television cameras focused on an empty chair. No shocking announcements. Only young apprentices meeting experienced mentors who genuinely cared about their futures. That mattered more than headlines. As we walked toward the parking lot, Ryan stopped beside my truck. "Dad?" "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For loving me even when I made it difficult." I placed one hand on his shoulder. "Being your father was never the difficult part. The difficult part was waiting for you to find your way home." Ryan wrapped his arms around me. The kind of hug that lasts long enough to say everything words cannot. For the first time in years, I felt my family becoming whole again. Not because money changed anybody. Money did not repair one relationship. Choices did. Time did. Humility did. Love did. The quiet, stubborn kind of love that refuses to disappear had finally been met by gratitude. For years, Ryan believed there would always be another chance. Another visit. Another phone call. Another Father's Day. Another ceremony. Another tomorrow. Most of us live as though time is a savings account that will always contain enough for one more withdrawal. It does not. One day, the person waiting for your call may no longer be there to answer it. One day, the chair you intended to fill later may belong to somebody who arrived on time. Daniel did not receive $800,000 because he replaced my son. He received it because he honored the father he lost by becoming a man who showed up for others. Ryan did not lose my love because he missed one ceremony. But the ceremony revealed a pattern we could no longer pretend not to see. The empty chair did not create the distance. It made the distance visible. Sometimes that is what a consequence does. It does not invent the truth. It removes the place where the truth had been hiding. I once believed parents should never keep score. I still believe that. Love should not become an invoice. A child should not be forced to repay every meal, every school fee, every sleepless night, and every sacrifice. But refusing to keep score does not mean pretending nothing matters. Presence matters. Effort matters. Time matters. And when somebody repeatedly chooses not to come, eventually the absence becomes part of the relationship. Ryan could not return the years he had missed. He could not sit in the chair that had been empty during my ceremony. He could not erase the photograph beside the resort pool. He did something better. He began making different choices before it was too late to make any at all. He called. He visited. He listened. He accepted that trust required time. And he kept showing up even after the public attention faded and nobody was watching. That is how I knew the change was real. Daniel once asked whether I regretted giving him the award after Ryan returned. I answered immediately. No. The gift was never punishment for Ryan. It was gratitude toward Daniel. One person's return does not erase another person's loyalty. Love does not need to steal from one relationship to honor another. Daniel remained the son of my promise. Ryan remained the son of my blood. They occupied different places in my life. Both places were real. The Legacy Gratitude Fund now supports students across Ohio. Some study engineering. Some enter apprenticeships. Some learn welding, robotics, electrical work, or industrial maintenance. Daniel continues teaching. His students have built machines far more impressive than the robots we saw during that first classroom visit. Ryan volunteers several weekends each year. The first time he arrived, Daniel handed him a box of tools without making a speech. Ryan accepted them. Sometimes forgiveness looks like that. Not a dramatic embrace. A tool placed into another person's hand. An opportunity to help. A quiet invitation to become useful. The Crystal Award still sits beside Linda's photograph on my mantle. The leather journal Daniel gave me rests beneath it. On difficult days, I open to the first page. Some men earn promotions. Others earn respect. You taught me the difference. I am not certain I taught Daniel that. I believe Michael did. I was simply fortunate enough to stand nearby while the lesson continued. Sometimes I look at Linda's photograph and wonder what she would think of everything that happened. I believe she would have been proud of Daniel. I believe she would have been disappointed in Ryan. But I also believe she would have left the porch light on. Not because she approved of what he did. Because loving a child and holding the child accountable are not opposites. Real love can say, "You hurt me." The consequence remains. And the door is still open if you return honestly. That is what happened. Ryan returned. Not all at once. Not through one apology. He returned through Sunday visits. Morning telephone calls. Fishing trips. Fence repairs that were not necessary. Coffee on the porch. Ordinary days. The same kind of ordinary days he had once considered too easy to postpone. And that is the lesson I carry from the day my company celebrated 40 years of my life. Money was the part that made the headlines. $800,000. A dramatic announcement. A son watching from a luxury resort. But the money was never the heart of the story. The heart of the story was one empty chair. One man who came when asked. One son who almost waited too long. And one father who loved both without pretending their choices were the same. If somebody sacrificed quietly for you, do not wait for a ceremony to thank them. Do not assume they already know. Do not believe there will always be another weekend. Another holiday. Another chance. Call them. Visit them. Sit beside them while the chair is still available. Because money can be earned again. A missed opportunity can sometimes be replaced. But time is the one gift nobody can return once it has been spent. The chair beside me is no longer empty. Ryan arrives early now. Daniel usually arrives earlier. Sometimes the three of us sit together. One connected by blood. One connected by promise. And one old man grateful that life gave him enough time to watch both become family. The day began with an empty chair. It ended with 112 missed calls. But the true ending came months later, when my son arrived before I did, saved the seat beside him, and looked toward the door until I walked inside. He stood. He smiled. And he said the words I had spent years waiting to hear through his actions. "I'm here, Dad." This time, he was.